Hi, so Bernd Lapp, how are you? Thanks for making the time today.
Yes, great. It's wonderful. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, so go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be in the crypto space, and then we can talk about what you're working on these days.
Yes, sure. So you introduced me already. So my name is Bernd, and I'm living right now in Switzerland in what we call Crypto Valley. I moved here 2014 by coincidence, straight into Zug, the major part where crypto is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I was working on a fintech startup, doing the business development for them. We would do peer-to-peer lending, and the developer then explained to me, hey, if you do peer-to-peer stuff, you need to look into this technology of Bitcoin. And I've heard of Bitcoin in 2014, but not really looked into it.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained it to me. He explained the blockchain to me, and I realized this is really a huge thing happening. And actually, what I was creating back then was probably a middleman solution. So I came to the point where I said, yeah, that's going to be nice for now, but actually the blockchain itself makes it uh, is a much better solution than what I'm creating right now. So
Mm-hmm.
I focus on that. And I've tried to educate myself back then on what is blockchain, dig deeper into the topic, and was listening to a podcast back then where Vitalik was explaining the world computer. Vitalik Buterin was talking about his vision of where Bitcoin should come to. So actually, he was talking about Ethereum, the
Mm-hmm.
world computer, and I thought it was very interesting. And then I found out that the Ethereum Foundation was just being created like 15 minutes from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
So I simply went over to their house, and it was a regular family house that they lived and worked in.
Mm-hmm.
I knocked on the door and said, "Is there anything I can help you with?" So I then supported the Ethereum Foundation on business topics, on communications, organizational structure, and things, and became a member of the advisory board of the Ethereum Foundation. And that's how I went or became more familiar with the network, with people working in the space, with the technology itself. I'm not a developer, so I'm not a coder or
Mm-hmm.
anything. I am a developer, I always say, because I'm a business developer. So, but that's a different topic. Um, so yeah, and I really enjoy or still enjoy being in this space, and it's very open, very receptive, and I've learned so many things, and that it also changed a lot of my of the view on topics that I had until then. So a lot of governance topics, or just simply how money works. It's I've never thought about that before.
Mm-hmm.
Through blockchain topics and the space, I really am now much more aware of how money works. So yeah, that's how I came into the space. So it was mid 2015 that I joined the Ethereum Foundation.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So what are you working on these days?
Yeah, so I have many projects since I know a lot of people in this space, and we all have crazy ideas and want to get them accomplished. So my main project is called Swarm City.
Mm-hmm.
It's a peer-to-peer marketplace, or at least a protocol for a peer-to-peer marketplace. So you can check it out at swarm.city.
Mm-hmm.
And it's already, we've been working on this since end of 2016, early 2017, and it's almost done, I would say, from the point of view that we simply want to create a protocol where people can create their own marketplace on top of it. And the marketplace they create, they don't need to understand the blockchain technology anymore, or they don't need to code in blockchain terms.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they can simply create an app or a website on top of it that interacts with the protocol that we created. So that is one of my main topics. But again, I'm not developing, so I'm not coding. So and a lot of coding needs to be done still. we're really working on bleeding edge technology, as we always say, and it needs some readjustments over time. Since we've been doing this for more than 2 years, it's already went through several stages. So this is one project, and then I realized
Well,
that.
hang on. I want to talk about Swarm City a little bit because I'm very curious. So, Swarm City, is that based on? Because I know that the Ethereum Foundation is also working on a protocol called Swarm, which seems to be an alternative to IPFS.
Yes. So Swarm, yeah, exactly. So Swarm itself is a technology to store data, so to speak. And but it's also it's even more than that. But we're not affiliated with them. But we're actually now discussing a lot of things with the people around Swarm, because we've been working on IPFS. We've used IPFS until now, and also Whisper, which are Whisper is another Ethereum feature, I would say, built in the Ethereum blockchain that allows you to communicate peer-to-peer encrypted, or even unencrypted. It depends on how you use it. And so we're actually talking to the Swarm team right now to make Swarm City even more useful and usable, to really create the kind of marketplaces we want. Because most of the times you need to store some data on your marketplace, and really want to create a decentralized solution at the end in almost every step that we take. So and Swarm would allow us to make a decentralized storage solution at the end as well.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you mentioned that you were using IPFS before, and now I guess you're switching or integrating more with Swarm. So what led to that decision, if I might ask? What are the differences, and how can you contrast the two different technologies? Because they seem ostensibly very similar.
Yeah, from the outside, yes. On IPFS has been more mature for the solutions we needed at the time. So that's why we chose them first. Now it seems that Swarm itself gets to be more feature rich, let's say. So it seems that Swarm can also help us solve solutions that are more dynamic. Like if you need a map on, let's imagine we're really replacing Uber as a ride sharing service, because that's kind of a marketplace we always wanted to create on Swarm City. Then you need a map that shows drivers and passengers, and eventually they should move at some point. So you see that the driver that's picking me up is actually moving closer to me. And that is something that we couldn't accomplish with IPFS. But now with Swarm, we are looking into solutions how we can solve that even. That you have a very dynamic solution, dynamic map. It's not just a static map where you see like every, 60 seconds somebody is moving and there's a new dot and so on, but actually you see a moving vehicle. So those are solutions that Swarm would allow us. And but I honestly have to say this is a decision that the development team around, we call him King Flurkle, made, and he's much more into that topic. And he met with the Swarm team also at DEF CON in November last year. And there's a very strong exchange between King Flurkle and the Swarm dev team. So it's basically a decision where we say now we can use Swarm before we couldn't use Swarm because it wasn't advanced enough.
Right.
But now it seems really much more. It's getting much more ahead of things, and it's also the difference, or what I like about Swarm and Whisper in general, is that they're embedded into Ethereum. So you don't have a service sitting on top of it, which is okay as well. But if it's embedded, it interacts much easier. if it's really designed to be within this a specific blockchain.
Right, right. No, that's cool. So you also mentioned that Swarm City is a decentralized marketplace. So, obviously people in this space would be very familiar with Open Bazaar.
Mm-hmm.
So how is Swarm City different from Open Bazaar in your view?
Yeah, Open Bazaar is one use case. It's a buy and sell market for goods.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one kind of a use case that you can create. And Open Bazaar created that use case themselves. So they've built the final version or the user interface as well. We never thought about that. We never we don't think we're the best people to run a marketplace. We simply want to create a framework that you can run any kind of marketplace on top of it. So it could be, I always give these examples of the huge companies because I love that part that we could actually decentralize them. It would be in decentralized Amazon, would be like a buy and sell marketplace like Open Bazaar. That's
Right.
definitely possible. But it's also possible to have like an Airbnb on top of it, or an Uber. So it's the simple mechanism behind it is always the same. You always have somebody that provides something and somebody that needs something. And this could be a good or this could be a service.
Okay. But I mean, I guess my question is Open Bazaar extensible? Because basically what you're saying is Open Bazaar has spent time on their user experience, and what you're doing is you're spending time more on your protocol.
Yes.
But in my view, I guess my question is, obviously the user experience, the UX of Open Bazaar must also have a protocol behind it. So is there a limitation that you've observed with their protocol? Is it not extensible? Is it not flexible enough? Is there any reason why they couldn't do all of the things that you just mentioned in the future?
Yes, well, the main topic is that it's built on Bitcoin and it's much more complex, therefore. So any change to it is almost a opcode change that they need to do.
Okay.
So it's that's why we chose Ethereum, not just because I'm sort of involved or was involved with the Ethereum Foundation itself, but because we like the smart contract, the programming language that allows us to create something. So it's for us, or our system is easier to adapt and to amend than if you put the same thing on Bitcoin. So I have the greatest respect for Open Bazaar that they've created this on Bitcoin, and it's really great. And but I think for them to change something that could be quite hard to do. So it's not like an open protocol that people can just even just fork and put their own user interface on top of it. I think that's very complex what they've built.
Right, because I did talk to Brian Hoffman
Mm-hmm.
on this my channel here.
Great.
And he mentioned that he was adding capabilities to allow transactions in multiple cryptocurrencies. So I'm not sure if it's as tied into the mainline OG Bitcoin ecosystem as you think. I think that they are over time adding more flexibility to their platform. So but that's neither here nor there. I'm just trying to understand the major differences between Open Bazaar and Swarm City.
I think if you maybe somebody should look into. I've not really delved deep into Open Bazaar, and I've looked at the protocol. I have talked to several people. If they change to different currencies, then at some point there is a server involved. There is like a centralized solution involved. So that's what we definitely try to avoid at all. So that's maybe one topic. But I'm not even capable of really discussing anything about Open Bazaar.
Right. I understand. It's not what you're working on. No, I was just for my personal information and also for my viewers is I'm trying to basically get the broad strokes of what the major differences are so that I can understand the strengths and weaknesses of both platforms. Uh,
Sure.
and the different use cases. So obviously, um, there's no need to rebuild the wheel if you already have a wheel. But if there's a problem with the wheel, you need to, change it, right? You need to do something for a specific use case. So the specific use case of Swarm City is not just a buy and sell marketplace, but it's also a marketplace for potentially services and a gig economy like
Yeah.
Airbnb, like Uber.
So
So it's
actually, Swarm City itself is more like Craigslist. So we
okay.
only offer like different. It's a marketplace. In our case, is called hashtag. So we offer just a user interface that shows different hashtags. That is what we create. We don't own the marketplaces. We own the URL swarm.city, and that's it. So, but the protocol can be used by anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and anyone can create a separate URL with only his marketplace on top of it, or he can create an app, whatever. So you can use the protocol, you can fork that, or you can use as is and just build your own things on top of it. The only thing we own is swarm.city, and if anybody wants to have their marketplace on swarm.city, then we have to accept it. And that's sort of the you could say this is the decentralized approach there is, because you need somehow to have access to this marketplace. And we still feel that this is the best way to do it, like through an URL and not through an app.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just show how this can be done, but we own that part. But on the other side, the protocol is open, available. It's on the blockchain. It's smart contracts. That's why we didn't create any sort of user interface yet on top of it, or just a very basic one, not a
Right.
specific.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks for elaborating on Swarm City. So you mentioned you had another project that you were working on that you wanted to discuss.
Yes, I mean several. It's such a great space. So there's so many ideas you can think about and work on. So another topic that I identified was when I tried to sort of show Swarm City to large corporate or to as a solution for enterprise. I realized that in Switzerland, for example, or Europe, or even the US, Canada, nobody needs a decentralized product just because it's decentralized. So it has to be convenient, it has to be useful, and so on. And to be honest, Swarm City cannot compete with Amazon or Uber or any one of these services on a convenience factor. It can on a technical level, because we say we're decentralized, but nobody needs that, at least not in these countries. But then there is countries like people in Latin America that need decentralized products because they're censored at some point. They have oppression, so they cannot just start their own business. Corruption. And most of all, they have a currency that is not really working in most of these countries.
Right.
And so what I did last year was I reached out to people on LinkedIn and Twitter and said, I want to do a tour through Latin America with products you can use. And we're not going to explain blockchain itself. We're not going to explain the technology, but simply the solution we provide and why it's useful for you. And that was pretty interesting. First of all, it was interesting to find projects that you can use today. That's not easy. You hear about all these ICOs, and 2017 was a great year for ICOs, and 2018 as well, but none of them are really live yet. So none of them have a product that you can just simply show to people and say, this is a replacement of WhatsApp, or this is a replacement of Uber, and so on. So none of them are at a stage where you can actually, or not many of them are at a stage that you can use them. So, but I found 6 projects, and actually these projects were or are really something where you can create a full economy. That was my goal. I wanted to show, if I go to these countries, I wanted to show a full economy that they, once they're in this space, they can really stay in there. And they don't have to leave their country, they just leave their economy. You
Right.
know, that was my real intention, because I read about all these people leaving Venezuela and other countries. And I thought, my goodness, if I've moved from Germany to Switzerland, and that's like that was a big change for me. But still, I'm everything is safe for me, and everything is good. So, but these people really leave everything behind,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't know what to expect in a new country. And sometimes it's not even a better environment at the end, and they're not really welcome in some parts. So I thought, why can't we show them a solution where they don't have to physically leave, but just use a different economy, different currency, different system? And so I ended up organizing this tour. I was more like a travel agent, organizing flights, hotels, venues,
Mm-hmm.
and found great people that organized events locally. So we went to Brazil first. We started in Sao Paulo, then we went to Lima in Peru, then to Guayaquil, Ecuador, Barranquilla in Colombia, and then we went to Mexico. And that was really, really interesting, really good, to a great tour. We had around, sometimes only 50 people, sometimes 200 people visiting the events. And again, it was really about showing them the product and onboarding them and getting feedback from real users, because that's something also that's a great benefit as well of this tour, is that you don't have this echo chamber of people that already are in this space, people that are technically savvy enough to work on your product. No, these are people that haven't heard of crypto, or maybe they've heard of it, but they've not used it before,
Mm-hmm.
and so on. So they will give you much better or different feedback than they've experienced until now. So that's something that these products all need as well. If you want to become a mass adopted product at the end, you need audiences that give you feedback,
Right.
and you amend your product. So that was very beneficial to have that. So, and this year I'm actually doing 2 tours. So there's one tour only in Brazil, where we have 6 cities in Brazil that we visit, and one tour again through Latin America, and we even have Venezuela on the list. But I think it's really, really hard for us to go to Venezuela because of the shortage of electricity, and really the state that the country is in. It's even much more worse than last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so we might end up going close to the border of in Colombia,
Mm-hmm.
to Venezuela. But it's really the whole tour again is to show people how to use these products and be able to leave your economy but not your country. So
Right.
that's
Right.
the most important part.
No, I mean, generally speaking, I feel like, obviously competition is good, right? In my view, every country could benefit from this, right? Like this idea that we should have a monopoly. Like, is it possible that fiat currency has a reason to exist, and that in a world where we have mainstream cryptocurrencies, that things like the US dollar continue to persist? Maybe, right? Maybe they change their policies, they lower the rate of inflation, they do certain things differently. Like now they have a monopoly, and we can observe problematic behaviors with the central authorities, right? So when the decentralized alternatives are a credible threat, will they improve, right? And I think they will. But what you're discussing is very interesting because I spent a lot of time, in China myself. So I'm very familiar with, the censorship issues that you mentioned. I wasn't aware that there was censorship of networks in Venezuela, but whatever. It is interesting, going after the weaker targets, right? Like obviously there are countries where there is a need not for an alternative to a functioning system, but there is a need for an alternative to a non-functioning system, right? So it's clearly the best place to start, right? Start where the competition is weak, obviously.
Yeah, well, I see it more from where if you create a product, you want to solve a problem.
Right,
And I don't see this problem in our countries here in developed countries. I don't see the
right.
problem. I see it at the horizon. I see the banking system and as you mentioned, the inflation and everything leading up to a problem, but it's not here yet. And why not have, since we already built these products, why not show them and benefit from people that have this problem, benefit in brackets, by getting feedback on your solution and making it better. And at the end, it's even these developing countries, they might be at the forefront. And at the end, once the problem here in developed countries grows so much that we all need these decentralized products, they already know how to use them, and they might have marketplaces in place and own or run marketplaces that we can benefit from. And this is sort of something that in the long term could really boost their economy overall as well. So it could balance out, since they're not at the level we are right now. But then when we need decentralized products, they have them, and then it balances out. So I think it could be quite interesting in the long term to see the impact this has on these developing countries.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the clear benefit is obviously where the incumbent order is weak, right? That's where. So if the definition of technology is the practical application of scientific knowledge, right? The practical application, the problem that you're solving is in places like Venezuela or in countries that have a lot of censorship issues like China, Saudi Arabia, whatnot, right? So that's where these systems will shine. But eventually, I'm confident that they will mature enough to the point where they could give the incumbent orders in our countries a run for their money as well, right? Like Canada, Germany, Switzerland. Because these technologies have an advantage of moral influence, right? In that they are more democratic than a system of elected representatives, right? We're electing people to make decisions for us, and we have to, right? So there's one government, they have all the power, and if we like it or not, we have to wait 4 years to change our minds. And, so this technology has the advantage of being more morally legitimate and more democratic and more empowering to all stakeholders, right? So that's why, in my view, it will eventually solve problems that are just less perceived in the more developed countries, like in the Western, more affluent countries. But there are still problems. It's just that they're not day-to-day problems. They don't cause pain points day to day, right?
Yeah.
But I'm very confident and optimistic about the future of the crypto space, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an evolution. So it's not a process that will just happen overnight. Because imagine if the banking system collapses today and everybody would rush into crypto, I mean, that would collapse as well. So
right.
because it's just not mature enough.
It's not
So
ready for scale. Yeah.
exactly. So it's good that it's an evolution, and I think that every step that is being taken, like even with maybe private chains or other blockchains that are not as decentralized as the two major ones, as long as they find a use case that people want to use, I think it's good, because people will learn what cryptocurrencies is, and they will eventually at some point find a solution that is more decentralized and then switch to that. But it's not, they don't have to worry about or think about the what is cryptocurrency now again at that point. So I think that's it's good that it's an evolution, and it goes over time, and because we all need to grow. Our products need to grow. The architecture or the system itself needs to be scalable. So it would be too early for us if everybody wants to use cryptocurrencies right now. So I think that's good. But I just wanted to cover one more topic that I'm working on, because that's part of sort of the overall scheme that I have is decentralization, and I think blockchain is decentralized. But when I working on Swarm City made me aware that if one point in the system seems to become more and more centralized. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like the internet. When you think about the internet was created 50 years ago, mm-hmm. To make computers communicate over distance, and even in case of war, that they should be able to function. You know, if one computer goes down, or even several, there should be others that still work. So that's a decentralized system that they created back then. Mm-hmm. And so the internet was definitely decentralized from the beginning. That was the main purpose, to have redundancy and availability. Therefore, over time, the internet service providers created like hubs, like nodes that collected all these, collected all the service providers, not the service providers themselves, but so nodes were created where all these service providers come together. And to have access, because it's cumbersome to have your own access point. And so over time, these access points, these nodes, and Frankfurt has one of the largest here of the world. These nodes are the point where you can put censorship onto. You can manipulate, or you can grant access or deny access for service providers, for applications, for anything. And then on top of that, we have centralization in the products, and that's the part where we on the blockchain side focus the most on, is that we create decentralized products. But when I look at how blockchain evolves, I think that we go almost the same route as the internet, because our infrastructure gets more and more centralized. And what I mean by that is that you have two solutions in a blockchain that make it secure. It's the miners on one side that create the blocks, and then there's a validator, that's the node that validates the information.
Right.
And running a node, like when I was joining the Ethereum Foundation, I ran a node on my laptop. You know, it was easy. You just install they have a very nice wallet that you could install and run a node in the background. But now today the disk space is so big that I need an SSD disk for Ethereum to run, or an HDD for Bitcoin, but it's still more than 200 gigabytes of size that I need to store in almost either chain. And it has to be available 24/7. I need to be online, otherwise I'm not synchronized. And so what a lot of people do, and a lot of projects, and Swarm City included, and that's what we're about to change, is we use cloud services to run a node on, because it's much more convenient. The uptime is granted, so we know that the node will be available 24/7. You know, 99.98% probably, and we don't have to worry much. We just pay the monthly fee, and it's run on Amazon Web Service or DigitalOcean. But if you think about it, these are centralized services. These are services owned by a company. And at the end, this company can decide to run a script to find all the nodes that are running on it and shut them down or ask for more money or any kind of thing you can do as a centralized provider, they can do. And at some point, you can also deny access for certain applications. If your applications run through Amazon Web Service, and that's the only node, the only access point you have to the blockchain, your transactions go through that node, then Amazon can shut you down and can shut down one application.
Mm-hmm.
And where it's very obvious is with Infura. Infura is a service provided by Consensus,
Mm-hmm.
specific for Ethereum. So what Infura does is they provide the service to run a node. So you can just run a node and it doesn't cost you anything.
Mm-hmm.
Consensus covers the cost. But again, Infura runs on Amazon Web Service. So they don't host it themselves. So again, so it's a double centralized system. You go to Infura, which is owned by Consensus, and they run their solution actually on Amazon Web Service. So what I'm trying to show here is that we're going the same path as the internet did. So we've come from a very decentralized solution, an idea, to a point where you run through a bottleneck that is centralized. And it doesn't matter if the applications later on are decentralized again, because they still need to have this access point.
Right.
And so what a co-founder of Swarm City and myself, what we've created is a company that sells nodes. So we simply created hardware that is specific to run a node. And we've used the DAppNode solution. DAppNode is a software team I know well, mm-hmm. that created a simple on Linux-based user interface that you can run on this hardware device. And through the user interface, you can just by one click, you say, I want to run the Ethereum node, and then it runs the Ethereum node. Or you can say, I want to run the Bitcoin node. And I even have like two chains on my device running. So I have Bitcoin and Ethereum running because the device is large enough for the disk space. And so at least I'm supporting to keep the system decentralized. And if you think about it, all we need to do now, and this is still a big challenge, all we need to do is create like a decentralized cloud service, and there's several of them are being built, like Definity is one of them, iExec, and many others, that if you use those to now host your application or your nodes that then runs through that service, then you have a decentralized system again. And this can be run on several of these hardware devices. So it's mainly the topic of keeping the system decentralized, and that's I think not many people are aware of that yet, and not even people in the development space or developer space don't realize that what they do by using Amazon Web Service is really centralizing the system again.
Right. So, it's funny that you mentioned that, because from my perspective, I mean, I view protocols like IPFS or Swarm essentially as a decentralized cloud. I mean, in the use case of, let's say you want to have a website, right? A website ultimately is just a bunch of files. It's JavaScript, it's HTML code, it's pictures, it's videos, it's whatever, files that are being displayed by your browser, which is kind of like a sub-operating system, right? So you just have files that are sent to your browser, and your browser is showing you those files, right? So as soon as you have a decentralized file storage system like IPFS or Swarm, there's your cloud. Right? Like, am I wrong?
No. You're right. Or the part that I didn't explain well is that you still need an access point to the blockchain, and that is the node. So at the end, I want to be able to run. So we already are able to run Swarm City through my node here.
Mhm.
The transactions go through my node into the blockchain.
Right.
But if this was the only node that it would run through, if I don't know, by any incident happens that my electricity is gone, then the access point to Swarm City is gone. And by decentralized cloud, I mean that you have several nodes that Swarm City would run on. So that to me is a decentralized cloud in the end. So you would have a decentralized node cloud, let's say.
Mhm.
And this is not trivial, because you need to know, you have to have sort of the application running on it, and people need to find, or your device has to find the nearest application. It needs to be load balancing, it needs to be peer discovery, and all these topics. And
Yeah, I have to say, like, maybe you're approaching the problem from from a different perspective than I see it. Like, I can just imagine a system where, for example, each transaction could be a file.
mhm.
And if you have a system like IPFS, which can provide proof of retrievability, right? You can confirm that the transaction has been stored by multiple nodes on the IPFS network. So instead of re-engineering, IPFS to run nodes in the incumbent kind of blockchain architecture, why not change the blockchain architecture to just make it so that each transaction is a file, and we can prove that the files are retrievable, so we know that they've been stored by a certain percentage of people, right? And then this could allow for different forms of sharding, right? Like, not everybody needs to store every transaction, but if everybody is storing a certain percentage of transactions, randomly, just a random selection of 1% of all the transactions, and everybody's doing that, then we have a robust system. And I think that this is more applicable to directed acyclic graph based coins, more than rather than blockchain coin, because blockchain coins like Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever require that each node have a full history of every transaction. Whereas with DAG based coins, you can have each node only holding a certain percentage of the transaction and reconstituting the whole transaction history over the network. So I feel like it's more robust, and it also, there's a lower barrier to entry, in terms of storage requirements and everything else.
Yeah, I'm not so familiar with the DAG solution. I know that the IOTA is using that, for example.
Yeah, IOTA, the problem with IOTA is that they decided to roll their own encryption, which seems like a
Yeah,
mistake.
okay. That's
Yeah.
no, but in principle, the system itself is the DAG
Yeah.
solution, as
But
far as I.
there's Obyte, which used to be called Byteballs, and there's different competitors in the DAG space. Um, None of them are doing what I just mentioned at the moment, right? But what I said is, it's not science fiction. It's possible. It's just a question of implementation. So I feel like, instead of re-engineering the cloud for the purpose of running nodes, why not re-engineer nodes for the purpose of running on top of something like IPFS, right? Like, ultimately, this idea that everything is a file is one of the fundamental principles of Unix and Linux, right? Everything is a file. So why not just treat transactions as individual files? I think that's a more flexible architecture that is consistent with the way that computers work right now, and it doesn't require a tremendous amount of re-engineering. Kind of
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I'm not sure if I'm competent enough to really comment on that. There must be a reason for not having a like a system like this in place right now. I mean, IPFS is very close to it, but even IPFS needs some sort of you need to pin information or pin your data, and if you don't do this in a redundant solution, which my co-founder of Avado and Swarm City, Stefan Ponet, has worked on. He's created a IPFS consortium solution, sort of, so that I pin your data, you pin my data. You know, makes it redundant and makes it available even if my access point to IPFS somehow shuts down or I cannot run it anymore, then I can still access or people can still access the data and retrieve the data. So there is some downsides to the system right now, and it's not fully it's not a decentralized cloud yet as you would expect it to be. So
right. Cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
great.
those are the main topics I'm working on. There's I'm also advising some projects, and there's some really nice topics. But unfortunately, my time is running out now, so I have another call with my next project that I'm working on. It's they've just been participating in the Odyssey hackathon. It's a huge team of 25 developers that really want to change something, and I think that's something we can hopefully talk about whenever you have time again to chat with me.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. So is there anything else, like, do you want to plug any website or your social media? Do you want to give us any additional information before I let you go?
Sure. So people can always reach out to me on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's Bernd Lapp. It's you can find me on both under my name. And especially if you have a product that you want to show to users, you know, the tour in Latin America and Brazil, I still I'm looking for products that want to participate, and just reach out to me, send me a message, and I'm happy to give you more details and discuss how you can participate.
Right. Lovely. Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, absolutely. Anytime you have any updates or new projects that you want to talk about, just send me a message and we'll do another one of these interviews. Appreciate the
Great.
time. Have a nice day.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.